Close your eyes. Now imagine waking up not in your air-conditioned bedroom, but in a stifling reed hut nestled somewhere near the banks of the Nile. There are no alarms, no soft pillows, and certainly no filtered water beside your bed. Only the roar of the sun already slashing through your thatched roof like divine judgment. It's not even 6 a.m., but the temperature is rising faster than your heartbeat. The heat presses down on you like a god's hand, suffocating and absolute. Welcome to ancient Egypt, the land of pharaohs, pyramids, golden tombs, and brutal, suffocating, sweat-soaked survival. Forget everything you saw in glossy textbooks and museum gift shops. This isn't a romantic desert fantasy. This is a place where every grain of sand is a personal enemy. Every drop of water could be your last, and the gods are always watching. Sometimes in silence, sometimes through the burning sky. Tonight, you're going to find out why you wouldn't last a single day in this ancient empire. Because this journey, it's not about hieroglyphs and myths. It's about flesh and bone, about blistered feet and boiling blood, about being a human, small, fragile, and terribly mortal, beneath the eye of Ra. Ready? Let's begin. Before your eyes fully open, your body already knows the truth. It's hot. Not the kind of heat you shake off with a fan or a cold shower. No, this is ancient heat, a punishing, unrelenting force that creeps into your lungs and boils the sweat before it can even drip off your skin. You're lying on a straw mat, barely cushioned, wrapped in a linen sheet so thin it may as well be air. There's no privacy, no walls to block the wind, if it ever dares to show up. The so-called Nile breeze you've read about in poetic travel books, that died centuries ago, probably strangled by the humidity. By the time you crawl outside, the sun is already a white-hot blade in the sky, carving lines of light into your vision. It's only 8 a.m., but it feels like you're walking through a clay oven set to roast. Your feet touch the ground, barefoot of course, and the dirt beneath you is already hot enough to sear lentils. If you stand in one place too long, you'll bake into the earth like a forgotten offering to the gods. And guess what? There's no sunscreen, no aloe vera, not even a wide-brimmed hat from some dusty bazaar. If you're not rich, your options are limited to protective oils, which are too expensive for peasants like you. The best you can do? Rub crocodile dung or mud on your skin, which allegedly keeps the sun at bay. Yes, you smear crocodile crap on your face and hope the gods are feeling merciful. You're already thirsty. So where do you go for water, relief, or maybe just the chance to dunk your aching body into something cold? The Nile. Ah, the Nile. Revered, worshipped, eternal. And today, your bathtub. Except the Nile is not the sparkling oasis Hollywood promised. The moment you approach the bank, the air changes. A thick, rotten aroma curls into your nostrils. It smells like a swamp that lost a fight with a fish market and decided to die quietly in the sun. Flies buzz like angry spirits. Frogs croak. And there's a dead ibis floating past, staring at you with empty sockets. Still, you strip down. You wade in. Because there's nowhere else to go. Soap? That's for priests and royalty. You get sand. Coarse, gritty, unrelenting sand that you rub over your skin like a poor man's scrub. It doesn't cleanse so much as scrape. Every pass leaves you redder, rawer. And you pray a crocodile doesn't pop its head above the surface and decide your flailing arms look like breakfast. You pound your clothes against stones, if you're lucky enough to own more than one set, and hope you don't get leeches in the process. But the worst part isn't the water or the mud or even the risk of parasitic infection. It's the eyes, because this isn't your private bathroom. It's a public bath, shared with women, children, elderly neighbors, cows, and the occasional goat. Privacy isn't just a luxury here, it's a myth. And if you're modest, too bad. The Nile doesn't care. When you're done, you're only marginally cleaner. You now smell less like sweat and more like river rot. But it's time to fill jars and haul them back to your home before the sun climbs even higher. And even though your back screams, your hands blister, and your legs tremble, you keep walking. Because in ancient Egypt, rest is not part of the morning routine. Survival is. Breakfast of the damned. Bread, beer, and a side of grit. Back from the river and already sweating through your linen, you're ready for breakfast. But don't expect anything remotely comforting. This isn't a luxury hotel with an all-you-can-eat buffet. This is ancient Egypt, and breakfast is an act of survival, not satisfaction. You sit, if you're lucky enough to own a stool. Otherwise, you squat in the corner like everyone else, knees hugging chest, flies already orbiting your body like you're the main course. The meal? Bread. And more bread. But not the kind you might imagine. No golden crusts, no soft centers. This bread is dense, coarse, and crunchy with regret. Made from emmer wheat or barley, it's baked in ovens that double as mouse nests and rat playgrounds. You chew and immediately feel the grit between your teeth. That's not seasoning. That's sand. Uninvited, omnipresent, and baked right in, thanks to the primitive grinding stones used to make flour. Some call it the taste of Egypt. Dental archaeologists have another name for it: tooth death. Then comes the beer. But again, don't get excited. This isn't your frosty pint of crisp lager. It's liquid bread, cloudy, thick, lukewarm, and more porridge than drink. It has the consistency of runny oatmeal and the taste of something that's been sitting in a clay jug since last week. And yet, you drink it, because it's safer than water. Children drink it. Elders drink it. You drink it. Not because it tastes good, but because the brewing process boils out the parasites, the very ones currently having a pool party in the Nile. If the gods are smiling on you, and honestly, when does that happen? You might get a bonus, a dried date, maybe an onion, maybe even a sliver of fish if someone caught one and didn't eat it already. But don't expect variety. You get bread, beer, and bugs every day, forever. As you eat, flies land on your food. You swat with one hand, hold your beer with the other, and chew like you're fighting the bread rather than consuming it. It's gritty, it's joyless, and it's your best meal of the day. Bon appetit, peasant. Work until you drop. Labor in the land of the sun. God. You've eaten your sand-sprinkled breakfast and slurped your soupy beer. Your stomach isn't full, just sufficiently silenced for the misery ahead. Because now, it's time to work. Not a desk job, not customer service, not even back-breaking construction in the modern sense. No, ancient Egyptian labor is a different beast. One that chews you up under the scorching eye of Ra, the sun god, and spits you back out at dusk, barely human. Unless you're a priest, a scribe, or somehow royalty, you're not. Your job is brutal, endless, and deeply humiliating. If you're a farmer, congratulations. You'll be ankle-deep in Nile mud by sunrise. You pull weeds, plant barley, and dig irrigation trenches under the relentless gaze of an overseer who seems to enjoy yelling more than breathing. The tools? Wooden plows, stone sickles, and your own bleeding hands. You bend until your spine burns. You sweat until your skin stings. And if your back hurts, that means it's working. If you're a laborer, things get worse. You might be hauling multi-ton blocks of limestone for temple construction, dragging them up ramps made of packed gravel in blind hope. No shoes, no gloves, no mercy. If you trip and break your ankle, that's a shrug from the foreman and a permanent layoff. Working on a pharaoh's tomb? Now you're chiseling chambers in stone, sometimes underground, with only a flickering oil lamp and whispers of curses dancing through the narrow tunnels. If you chip a wall the wrong way or desecrate a sacred symbol, The pharaoh might not just fire you, he might bury you alive, curse and all. And if you're a woman, don't assume you're spared. You're grinding grain with stones that pulverize both wheat and your wrists. You haul water, weave linen, cook, care for children, wash clothes, and still head to the fields when labor runs short. Your break is when the baby naps, for 7 minutes, if you're lucky. Oh, and forget a lunch break. You eat on the go, bread in one hand, baby in the other. And while you're swatting flies from the food, you're also preparing dinner and cleaning up whatever disaster the Nile god left in the house. There's no clock to punch. The sun is your supervisor. It rises, you move. It sets, you collapse. There is no pause, no pacing, only the crushing rhythm of survival. And still, there's a rule etched into the walls of your soul. Do not complain. Because your boss isn't just an aristocrat or landowner. He's a living god. The pharaoh is not a ruler in the modern sense. He's the divine embodiment of Horus, the falcon-headed god of kingship and son of Ra himself. To question his authority isn't just disobedience, it's blasphemy. Saying, "This job sucks," could land you in shackles under a whip, or worse, into an early tomb without any of your afterlife paperwork in order. You don't even see the pharaoh. At best, you glimpse his golden litter float by during a festival while priests chant his name like a divine echo. You carve his statues, you build his temples, you chant his praises, and then you go home with bleeding feet and a handful of dust for your trouble. Work in ancient Egypt is not a means to an end. It is the end. Sand. The eternal enemy you eat, breathe, and sleep with. If the sun is your master, then sand is your tormentor. Petty, persistent, and absolutely everywhere. There is no escaping it. It doesn't matter if you're building temples, baking bread, tending goats, or offering prayers. Sand will find you. It's in your hair, your tunic, your eyes, your teeth, your food, your dreams. It's not just an environmental factor. It's a full-time companion. A cruel one. Let's start with your clothes. You wear linen, light, breathable, and the best fabric the desert has to offer. Unfortunately, linen is also useless against the fine, clingy grains of the Sahara. Sand slides down your back, clings to your armpits, settles into your undercarriage, and somehow always ends up inside your ears. There is no escape. Even scratching makes it worse. It's like rubbing yourself down with a cactus dipped in glass shards. Then there's the bread. Remember breakfast? That gritty, dense loaf you gnawed through with the enthusiasm of a dying donkey? That wasn't flour giving you that extra crunch, because the grinding stones used to prepare emmer wheat also shave off tiny bits of stone. So every bite of bread comes with a complimentary dose of rock grit. Ancient Egyptian dental remains show extreme wear by age 25. You are literally grinding down your own teeth with every meal. Imagine chewing chalky sandpaper dipped in beer-flavored soup. Delicious. Think your home is safe? Nope. Your mud brick house, crafted from Nile clay and dried in the sun, is riddled with cracks and crevices. Your floor is packed earth. Your windows have no glass. The wind doesn't knock politely. It barrels in, howling like a banshee, dragging entire dunes into your soup pot. You go to bed on a straw mat covered in, you guessed it, sand. You wake up with it in your mouth, your fingernails, and between your toes. You dream of drowning, but not in water, in grit. Shoes? Hilarious. Most people walk barefoot, meaning the soles of your feet are raw, blistered, or just permanently leathered from stepping on sun-baked stones and sharp debris. If you're lucky, you might have reed sandals, but they offer as much protection as a wet leaf in a knife fight. And then there are sandstorms, sudden, blinding, apocalyptic. One moment you're walking through the market, chatting with a neighbor about bread prices, and the next, you're choking, blind, and being flayed alive by the wind. Visibility drops to zero. You cough until your ribs hurt. You stumble, eyes burning, nose bleeding, and finally crawl behind a wall, praying the storm passes before it strips the skin from your face. In short, sand is not a backdrop in ancient Egypt. It is an antagonist, a presence, a punishment. And even when you try to wash it off, back in that lovely Nile, you realize you're just trading sand for parasites. The gods are watching, religion as your daily operating system. In ancient Egypt, faith isn't a choice. It's not something you practice on weekends. It's not a Sunday robe or a quiet prayer before sleep. It is your schedule, your employer, your law enforcement, and your hope for eternity, all rolled into one cosmic chain of command. And the gods? They're not distant. They're everywhere. Every city, every village, every mud brick wall has a patron deity. The sun rising? That's Ra, sailing his flaming chariot across the sky. The moon? That's Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, making his nightly rounds. The Nile that floods, the harvest that fails, the sandstorm that nearly peeled your skin off? All of it. Divine messaging. Even that mysterious rash on your inner thigh? Could be a curse. The gods of Egypt don't merely observe. They interfere, and sometimes they judge with silence. That's often worse. Before your breakfast, you offer crumbs to Hathor, goddess of joy and motherhood, hoping your child doesn't wake up screaming with a fever. Before you go to sleep, you whisper to Bes, the dwarf god of protection, so nightmares don't drag your soul into the underworld. Stub your toe? Don't swear. Set, the god of chaos, loves that energy. And he just might make your goat miscarry. Religious rituals aren't optional. They're checkpoints, daily tasks, spiritual bureaucracy. You recite phrases, light incense, mark lunar calendars, and hope you haven't angered Amun, the invisible creator who can smite you simply by not showing up. And then there's the afterlife, the real prize. Because in Egypt, death isn't the end. It's the start of the audit. When you die, your soul embarks on a terrifying journey through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. There are lakes of fire, talking gates, serpent demons, and yes, a giant crocodile-lion-hippo hybrid named Ammit, who will eat your soul if you fail the ultimate test. Here's how it works. Your heart, believed to be the seat of your soul, is weighed on a scale against the feather of Mayat, the symbol of truth and justice. If your heart is heavier, filled with lies, betrayal, or that one time you kicked a stray cat, you're done. Ammit devours you. No do-over, no reincarnation, no afterlife. You're erased, forgotten, as if you never existed. But if you pass, you enter the field of reeds, a heavenly version of Egypt, green, fertile, peaceful. You get your own land, your family is there, you never go hungry, and you sail down a divine Nile forever. It's the eternal retirement plan. But be warned, this cosmic HR department doesn't tolerate errors. One misspoken spell, one forgotten offering, and your eternity becomes an eternal glitch in the afterlife system. And this belief? It controls everything. The pharaoh doesn't just rule because he's powerful. He is a god. His voice is law because it's divine. His image is bigger in every mural. His name is chanted in rituals. He doesn't age. He ascends. And you? You're just a pious processor in a grand spiritual computer. Keep the gods happy. Keep the cosmic gears turning. Hope they're not in a bad mood today, because if they are, you'll know. In the form of plagues, floods, miscarriages, or that mysterious cough that just won't go away, medicine or magic. The painful practice of ancient Egyptian healing. So you stepped on a sharp shard of pottery, or maybe it was a scorpion. Your leg is swelling, fever's setting in, and you're hallucinating something that may or may not be Anubis waving at you from the corner of your hut. Time to seek medical help. But in ancient Egypt, there is no hospital waiting room, no antiseptic, no aspirin, no guarantee of survival. Instead, you're brought to a priest doctor, a hybrid healer who knows both herbs and hexes, because here science and sorcery are inseparable, and you're about to find out how unsettling that can be. The physician examines your wound, nods solemnly, and begins treatment with a spell. He chants a protective incantation to ward off evil spirits, because obviously your infection might be due to a ghost curled up around your spleen. Then he applies a paste made of honey, moldy bread, and crushed herbs. Ironically, this part kind of works. Honey is antibacterial, and the mold contains early forms of penicillin. But before you can feel hopeful, he starts smearing cow dung on your chest and rubbing onion juice into your scalp. You ask why. He says, because that's what the papyrus scrolls say. Got an eye infection? Time for lizard blood, ochre powder, and beer, dabbed carefully while chanting to Horus, the falcon god. Need a fever cured? That'll be a charm amulet, a pinch of natron, and a soothing prayer to Sekhmet, lion-headed goddess of wrath and healing. Oh, and let's not forget the amulet protocol. Whether you're giving birth, getting stitched up, or just sneezing too loud, a good healer will hang an enchanted charm around your neck. Some are shaped like ankhs, others like beetles or gods. They don't cure the illness, they scare it away. Now say you've got a deep abscess on your back. Good news, surgery exists. Bad news, no anesthesia. The doctor pulls out a bronze blade, sharp enough to slice flesh, dull enough to make you scream for the afterlife. 2 attendants pin you down. One whispers prayers, the other mutters something about the serpent curse. You're told to bite into a mud brick while they cut. The agony is spiritual. And don't even ask about dentistry. Remember all that sand in your bread? By your 20s, your teeth are ground down to nubs. One of them gets infected? Your options are, live with the pain until you die. Die from the infection. Have it pulled by someone with blacksmith-grade tongs and no regrets. Some people don't survive the extraction. Others survive, but wish they hadn't. And yet, the Egyptians were among the most advanced medical thinkers of the ancient world. They cataloged illnesses, categorized treatments, even recorded hundreds of ailments on scrolls like the Ebers Papyrus. But everything was laced with ritual, with the sacred, with a lingering fear that behind every infection, every cough, every ache, was a god who was slightly annoyed. And if the herbs didn't work, they'd simply assume the demon inside you was too powerful, so they'd bury you with an amulet, a prayer, and hope your next life was less cursed. A woman's place. Rights, wrongs, and relentless labor. You might be surprised to learn this, but ancient Egyptian women had more rights than many of their sisters across later empires. They could own land, run businesses, divorce husbands, and sue men in court. They could inherit property, manage estates, and even hold religious office. One woman, Hatshepsut, ruled as pharaoh, commanding armies and building monuments that still stand today. Sounds progressive, right? But before you sign up for a time-traveling girl boss vacation, you should know the daily reality was anything but royal. If you were an average Egyptian woman, you woke before dawn not to sip dates by the Nile, but to begin a punishing cycle of physical labor that rarely let up. First comes the grain. You kneel for hours, grinding wheat and barley with a saddle quern, pushing heavy stones back and forth until your shoulders ache and your palms blister. It's not just exhausting, it's destructive. Ancient skeletons show early signs of arthritis, spinal compression, and worn joints, even in young women. Then comes the water. You walk to the river, possibly dodging crocodiles, to fill heavy clay jars. You carry them balanced on your head or back, posture stiff, every step jarring your spine like a slow-motion whip crack. Once home, you cook over open flames in a house made of flammable mud brick. There's no chimney, just smoke that burns your lungs and eyes. You're coughing, sweating, and trying to keep your toddler from falling into the fire pit. And all the while, you're pregnant, or recently were. Childbirth in ancient Egypt? Brutal. No epidurals, no sanitation, just incense, chants, a midwife, and a hope that neither mother nor child is claimed by Set, the god of chaos. Mortality rates were high, and complications were met with poultices, amulets, and whispered prayers. Fashion? You wear a simple linen dress. It's light, breathable, and offers zero protection against the sun or sand. No underwear, no shoes, and your feet are as cracked as the parched earth you walk on. Want makeup? Sure. Egyptian women wore kohl eyeliner and scented oils, made from lead, applied with sticks. It gave you a divine appearance, yes, but also a decent chance of lead poisoning. And yet, there's dignity in this exhaustion. Despite the physical toll, women held power in their homes. They ran households, raised children, and often controlled domestic budgets. If you were born into a wealthy family, you might learn to read and write, become a scribe, a priestess, or even a royal advisor. But for the vast majority, your agency was exercised through endurance. You worked beside your husband. You prayed for rain and good harvests. You gave birth in the dirt and washed your baby in the river. You kept the fire burning, the bread baking, and the gods appeased. You were not property. You were the backbone of civilization, even if that backbone cracked by the age of 35. Dying is the easy part, the nightmare bureaucracy of the afterlife. You've survived the sand, the sweat, the gods, the childbirth, the crocodiles, and the dental disasters. You've finally dropped dead, whether from infection, exhaustion, childbirth, or just living too long in ancient Egypt. Surely now it's time to rest. Right? Wrong. Because in Egypt, death isn't the end. It's the beginning of the longest, most high-stakes cosmic exam you'll ever take. The moment your soul leaves your body, it enters the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. But this isn't some quiet, spooky void. This is an epic, multi-stage spiritual labyrinth filled with monsters, traps, rivers of fire, and gods who speak in riddles. You're not on a cloud strumming a harp. You're on a bureaucratic roller coaster, and one wrong move will get your soul eaten. Step 1. You face a tribunal of 42 divine judges. One by one, you must declare your innocence. I did not steal. I did not lie. I did not blaspheme. I did not slay sacred cattle. I did not covet my neighbor's donkey. Yes, that's a real one. Misspeak one line, forget one name, boom, your soul gets flagged. Step 2. The heart test. Your heart, believed to hold your memory, your character, your sins, is placed on a golden scale opposite the feather of Maat, symbol of truth, order, and cosmic balance. If your heart is heavier than the feather, enter Amit, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, all nightmare. She doesn't sentence you. She doesn't banish you. She devours you. Gone. No afterlife. No second chance. Just eternal oblivion. The most terrifying fate for a people obsessed with immortality. But let's say you pass. You now enter the field of reeds, a heavenly Egypt. Green, fertile, peaceful. You reunite with your loved ones, sail across shimmering waters, eat without hunger, and never sweat again. Sounds great, right? Well, it depends on your tomb prep. Because to even have a shot at passing this journey, your family must bury you properly, with grave goods, scrolls, spells, a book of the dead, and tiny Ushabti figurines to do your chores in the next life. If you're wealthy, you're wrapped in fine linens, surrounded by golden jewelry, perfumed oils, enchanted amulets, and jars to store your organs. If you're poor, you're buried in a pit, wrapped in old cloth, maybe with a clay pot for company. No map, no spells, just silence. And don't get too comfortable. Even in death, you're not safe. Because your tomb? It's prime real estate for looters. Grave robbers will strip you bare, sell your jewelry, burn your coffin, and toss your remains into a ditch. Your name? Forgotten. Your soul? Lost. Your body? Desecrated. And then, nothing. Because in Egypt, if your name is erased, you cease to exist. Not just physically, but cosmically. So no, dying isn't the end. It's the audit. And the gods? They've been keeping your receipts. Dress to distress. Fashion, filth, and fly. Swatting in the desert. From a distance, ancient Egyptians always look so elegant. White linen robes, coal-lined eyes, gold jewelry shimmering under a sapphire sky. They stride gracefully through murals like models on the world's oldest catwalk. But let's be clear. Those murals lie. In reality, fashion in ancient Egypt was a game of damage control, a daily battle against heat, sand, and an army of bugs that treated your body like an all-you-can-eat buffet. Let's start with the basics. Linen. Everyone wears it, rich or poor, pharaoh or farmer. Why? Because linen is lightweight, breathable, and most importantly, it's the only thing standing between you and the unforgiving sun. But here's the thing. It's also thin, easily shredded, and about as protective as wet parchment. For men, the go-to outfit is a simple white kilt or loincloth tied around the waist. For women, a sleeveless sheath dress, often held up with straps, if you're lucky. Some working-class women wore barely anything at all during labor to avoid dragging cloth through mud and fire. There's no underwear. None. And shoes? A luxury. Most people go barefoot, which means your soles are cracked, burned, and full of splinters, unless you own a rare pair of reed sandals. Great for status, terrible for sharp rocks. What about accessories? Yes, you'll see amulets, necklaces, bracelets, and eye makeup, not for beauty, but for survival. That kohl eyeliner? Made from ground lead and charcoal, it reduces glare from the sun and, according to ancient belief, wards off disease and evil spirits. But beauty hurts. Over time, the lead seeps into your system. You look divine, sure, but also might die younger, partially blind, or with a nervous system that sings like a harp with snapped strings. And don't get too attached to your outfit. It's your only one. Laundry day is whenever you absolutely can't take the smell anymore. You hand scrub your linen in the crocodile-infested Nile, dry it on a rock, and hope the heat doesn't melt it into crust. Then there are the flies. They swarm you at dawn. They buzz around your face, your food, your sweat-soaked clothes. They bite, sting, and dive bomb into your beer. You try to swat them with a reed fan, but it's like fighting a sandstorm with a spoon. Some people rub perfumed oils on their skin to mask their scent, but to the flies, that just means buffet with sauce. You spend your day sweating, swatting, and readjusting your linen like it's trying to escape your body and take your dignity with it. And just when you think things can't get worse, the wind changes, and now your beautifully flowing linen tunic has become a dust magnet plastered to your body, filled with grit, and flapping like a soaked bedsheet in a wind tunnel. Every crease, every fold is now full of sand, again. Ancient Egyptian fashion was less about elegance and more about endurance. You didn't dress to impress. You dressed to survive. Short lives, eternal dreams, death, tombs, and the price of immortality. If you've made it this far in ancient Egypt, through disease, childbirth, sunstroke, famine, and the gods' daily cosmic mood swings, congratulations. You're still going to die. Because in this ancient land, 35 is elderly. If you survive childhood, many didn't, you're expected to marry by 13, have children by 15, and work yourself into the ground for the next 2 decades. Heat stroke, infected cuts, Parasites, childbirth, and animal attacks are just part of the occupational hazards of being alive. There are no antibiotics, no stitches, no plan B. But despite that short, brutal lifespan, the ancient Egyptians were obsessed with eternity. They dreamed not of long lives, but of perfect afterlives, a paradise that stretched forever in golden light. A place called the Field of Reeds, where you could farm without sweat, eat without hunger, and sail the gentle Nile under a merciful sky. But eternity? It's not free. If you're rich, you spend your entire life preparing for death. You commission a tomb, not a grave, but a fully decorated, spiritually optimized eternity pod. You order statues, spell-covered scrolls, ritual objects, scented oils, jars for your organs, charms for your soul, and Ushabti figurines, tiny servants carved from clay to do your chores for you in the next world. And when you die, your body is embalmed, soaked in natron salt, perfumed, wrapped in hundreds of layers of linen, painted, placed into custom-fit sarcophagi, and lowered into your tomb like royalty, because you are now halfway to becoming a divine being. You're even buried with the Book of the Dead, a magical guidebook filled with passwords, spells, and tricks to survive the trials of the afterlife. It's like a cheat code for the soul. But if you're poor, you die as you lived, in dirt. You're wrapped in rags or animal skin, buried in a shallow pit, maybe with a clay pot of beer and a loaf of gritty bread. No spells, no statues, no sacred texts. You might make it to the Field of Reeds, if the gods are feeling charitable. But more likely, your soul wanders, lost, forgotten, eventually fading into nothing. Still, poor or not, every Egyptian believed they had a chance. That's the beauty of it. Even the humblest farmer clung to the dream that if they lived with ma'at, truth, order, harmony, they might earn a place in paradise. That belief gave their brutal lives purpose and their exhausting deaths meaning. So they saved what they could. They whispered spells under their breath. They asked scribes to write their names on pots, just in case that name might last. Because in Egypt, to be remembered was to live forever. Tomb raiders, curses, and the theft of immortality. Imagine this. You've lived a life of obedience. You've toiled, sacrificed, prayed. You've died, been wrapped in linen, buried with your treasures. You've passed the heart test. You're ready to enjoy eternity. And then, someone breaks in. A torch flickers in the dark. Footsteps echo through the stone passage, and a chisel meets the edge of your sacred coffin. Your name is about to be erased. Because in ancient Egypt, even the dead weren't safe. Tombs were stuffed with gold, amulets, perfumes, ivory combs, food offerings, jewelry, statues, and sometimes entire boats. Pharaohs were buried with unimaginable wealth, meant to accompany them into the afterlife. To looters? It was a treasure map written in stone. Tomb raiding became a full-time job. Some did it out of greed, others out of desperation. Egypt had periods of famine, war, and collapse where the choice was clear: starve or steal from the dead. Despite warnings carved into the walls, curses promising blindness, twisted limbs, or soul-eating serpents, grave robbers came anyway. Sometimes they were villagers. Sometimes they were the same workers who helped build the tomb. Even priests and guards turned to plunder during dark times. And the consequences? Severe. If caught, tomb robbers were beaten, mutilated, even executed publicly. Not just for theft, but for spiritual murder. Because robbing a tomb meant more than stealing wealth. It meant destroying someone's eternity, erasing their name from a tomb wall. That was the worst crime of all. Without a name, a soul could not be remembered, could not be summoned, could not be reborn. Even commoners weren't immune. You might be buried with just a pot of beer and a chunk of stale bread. But to a starving man in a collapsing dynasty, that was a feast. Over centuries, entire necropolises were emptied. Mummies were torn from linen wrappings, bones scattered, offerings stolen. And the great stone seals that once promised eternity now crumbled under the weight of time and poverty. Even the Valley of the Kings, home of the mightiest pharaohs, was looted. That's why Tutankhamun's tomb was such a marvel when discovered in 1922. It had escaped the plunder. But others? Shattered, emptied, desecrated. And here's the irony. Despite all the curses, the secret tunnels, the hidden chambers, the dead couldn't protect themselves. Eternity, it turned out, was fragile. A single thief, a single hammer, a single hungry night could turn a god into a skeleton and a king into a forgotten name. In ancient Egypt, you could live forever, but only if no one found you. The language of the gods. Hieroglyphs, power, and eternal memory. You've seen them before. Rows of mysterious birds, eyes, snakes, and stickmen marching across the walls of tombs and temples. But what you're looking at isn't just art. It's a spell, a record, a weapon, and sometimes a curse. This is the world of hieroglyphs. And in ancient Egypt, writing wasn't just communication. It was sacred magic. Over 700 symbols, each with complex meanings. Some represented full words, others were phonetic, sounding out syllables. And then there were determinatives, extra signs added at the end of words to clarify meaning, because writing the word star with just a picture of a star would apparently be too easy. There's no punctuation, no spaces, no vowels. And the direction? It depends which way the birds are facing. If the ibis is looking left, you read left. If the falcon faces right, you go that way. If the symbols look like they're doing yoga upside down, you better hope you're a trained scribe. And being a scribe? Elite. Powerful. Untouchable. Only about 1% of Egyptians could read or write, and scribes were among the most respected figures in society. They didn't farm, fight, or haul stone. They wrote the taxes, recorded the rituals, documented law, and preserved the names of the dead. Because here's the thing. In ancient Egypt, to write someone's name was to give them immortality. Their soul stayed alive as long as the name existed. That's why tombs were covered in hieroglyphs. Names, prayers, lists of offerings, maps of the afterlife. It wasn't decoration. It was a survival manual for eternity. And to erase a name? That was cosmic assassination. Your soul would disappear. Your identity would fade. You would cease to exist. That's why pharaohs had names chiseled as large as possible, sometimes repeated hundreds of times across temples. The more places your name appeared, the harder it was to forget you. Think of it as the ancient equivalent of SEO for the soul. But hieroglyphs weren't for ordinary people. To learn them, a scribe began training as a child, memorizing every symbol by rote, copying scrolls for years, and practicing until their hands cramped into claws. It was brutal, meticulous, and often thankless. But the reward? You got to shape history. You could immortalize a pharaoh, rewrite a war, or seal someone's fate. Your stylus was a divine instrument. Your ink was black with power. Your hand could place a soul into heaven or into nothingness. And now, thousands of years later, we still study their words, their stories, their warnings, because long after the bodies turned to dust and the tombs were robbed, the hieroglyphs endured. So, would you survive a day in ancient Egypt? Let's take stock. You've woken up on a straw mat, sweating under a sun that doesn't forgive. You've smeared crocodile dung on your face to block UV rays. You've bathed in a river full of parasites and possibly corpses. You've eaten bread filled with grit and bone dust, washed it down with lukewarm porridge beer, and hauled water jars until your spine screamed for mercy. You've labored in fields or on temple ramps, sweating under the gaze of overseers and gods. You've carved tombs for a pharaoh who won't remember your name, lived in a mud brick house that leaks sand, worn clothes that barely count as clothes, and swatted flies so persistently your arm has tendinitis. You've endured medical treatments involving cow dung, lead, and onion juice, with a side of incantations just in case your rash is demonic. You've lived with the constant fear of curses, plagues, and spiritual audits, where your heart is weighed and your soul is on trial before a jury of gods. And you've buried your dead in hopes they might be remembered, knowing full well that looters, wind, and time might scatter their bones and steal their eternity. So, could you survive? Technically, yes. But would you thrive? Absolutely not. Because unless you were born rich, educated, and connected, ancient Egypt didn't want you to thrive. It wanted you to function, to sweat, to worship, to serve. You were a cog in a cosmic system, a humble piece in a divine jigsaw puzzle. And that's what made it so remarkable. Because despite the hardships, the heat, the hunger, the sandstorms, the superstition, people believed. They hoped. They carved their dreams into stone. They decorated coffins with spells. They risked everything to build something greater than themselves. They stared down death not with fear, but with ritual. And in the end, some of them succeeded. Their names endure, their art survives, their hieroglyphs still speak. So no, you probably wouldn't last a day in ancient Egypt. But if you were born there, you'd learn, you'd adapt, and maybe, just maybe, you'd die clutching the hope that your name would echo through eternity.